We're at Union Square in San Francisco. It's a place that's kind of bittersweet for me. The sweet part of it, Kathy and I really like to come here when we can get away for a couple of days. It's a great place to stay, and then this area, we kind of split up for a bit and go different ways. I go to Nike Town, she goes to Macy's, maybe even Neiman Marcus once in a while. But the bitter part of it, in the early 80s, I was a youth pastor at a church in San Jose. We brought our youth choir here. It was a great youth choir, 100 voices and great music. We set up right in the middle of the square, had a permit to do that. The choir sang, they were awesome, just to gather the crowd. When the music was over, then it was my turn to speak to the crowd that had gathered. And what I remember, the bitter part of it for me, I can still hear my voice kind of echoing off the buildings here in the square as I really angrily talked to people about how awful they were and the sinfulness of this city and how evil this place was. And instead of having a sense of hopefulness and leaving people with a hunger to know God and how good God is, how much He cares about them, instead I think I made it feel like God was angry with them and against them. And I look back on that now, and really it makes me sad to think about the approach that I took. No response really from people that were there. Some people started to walk away, and I think there might have been a couple of chronically homeless people who responded at an invitation, and their just hearts are open. But it was really a moment for me that I look back on, and I think it's helped me now to realize that I can have a different approach. I don't compromise the message, but to have love for people is a much more important way of approaching them. And I find that sometimes we've got barriers in our own mind to how we can love people. And we need to make sure that our theology helps us to love and doesn't keep us from it. Have you ever had those moments where you felt like you were kind of actually a roadblock to somebody and trying to help them know who God is?
Regretfully, I have. I've been a barrier. I can think of times where I've wanted to communicate hope and love to people, and the reality was my approach was completely a barrier. I remember it was 1992, maybe 93, and a friend of I and I were sitting there talking. We were discussing about the things of God, and he's far from God at the time. He wasn't really interested, but a song came on the radio. And I remember the lyrics caught his attention because the song actually was a song by Eric Clapton, and it talked about heaven, and it talked about someday being in heaven. And he asked me what my opinion was. It was an opportunity where I could have so clearly communicated love. I could have so clearly at that moment communicated hope to him. But instead, I became a barrier. I remember as the lyrics came across the speakers, I paused for a moment and then I judged the singer. I said, he doesn't have to worry about going to heaven because one day he'll never be there. I judged him. Who am I? What am I? Worse than that, I was a barrier.
Yeah.
And I remember my friend just looked at me and he kind of took away from that a sad commentary on my faith. That day I didn't show him love, I showed him judgment.
It seems like Jesus' way was to reach out to people no matter where they were, even in the worst of circumstances in their life, and he embraced them somehow. He connected with their heart and spirit. Somehow he had a way of communicating with them that caused people to know that he cared about them. And instead of condemning and judging, Jesus came not to condemn, but instead to set people free. As you embark today on discussion in your group, we would encourage you to think about this for your own journey. We're all about growing. I want to grow. I have grown. I continue to grow. What is one barrier that you have to unconditionally loving other people? Have you thought about that? Is there anything in your life that keeps you from being able to really reach out and embrace people no matter where they're at in their journey? Have you ever been a barrier to someone else in their journey to find the love of Jesus? That's what we want to talk about today, and in doing so, kind of unlock for us some of the things that might keep us from being a bridge, keep us from being a hope-giving person to those who really we want to reach with the message of God's love. We don't want to make it more difficult for them, we want to make it easier for them. And often our approach and our ability to wrap our arms around people, validate them, be gentle in our response to them, and just remove the barriers. Sometimes instead we put barriers in the place. So we just encourage you to have a great discussion around that, and let's see what we can do this week even to touch somebody with God's love.